Welcome to the Data Leadership Lessons Podcast. I'm your host, Anthony J. Algman. Data is everywhere in our businesses, and it takes leadership to make the most of it. We bring you the people, stories, and lessons to help you become a data leader. Today, we're welcoming back Scott Taylor. Known as the Data Whisperer, Scott is a globally recognized thought leader and consultant on the strategic value of proper data management. As Principal of MetaMeta Consulting, he provides Data Evangelism-as-a-Service to help enterprises and tech brands tell their data story by focusing on the why of business alignment rather than the how of technical implementation. Scott has been a guest before, and it's great to have you back, Scott. Welcome.
Thank you, Anthony. Great to be back. Thanks for having me.
So you are here this week, and we're going to be talking a lot. We'll talk about your new book called Telling Your Data Story, Data Storytelling for Data Management. There we go. We make sure we plug our guests' work on this show. And we're here to talk about data storytelling, like first and foremost. That's why we're here today. And we'll see where it takes us. But I think the first question that I have for you is, what compelled you to write a book on data storytelling? Like, what was it where you were like, you know what, the world needs another book, and this book needs to be this one, because I know what it takes to write a book. You got to care about it. What is the telling your data story? Like that?
Love it. I was listening to the whole market, right? That's what we do. We try and sort of listen to where the market's going. What are people talking about? And I heard all this conversation around data storytelling, data literacy, the data science field. And I went, where's the voice of data management in all this? I didn't hear it. And you and I both, love that part of the business. How do you get that foundation right? How do you get data management, data stewardship, MDM, RDM, all those foundational things set? And as usual, a lot of the big trends, a lot of the hype, a lot of the buzz and hum and heat and excitement is around the analytics side of the business. Mm-hmm. So looking at data storytelling, there are about 20 or 30 books on data storytelling for analytics. There were 0 books on data storytelling for data management. So that was the impetus for me to jump in and say, all right, there are 2 kinds of data storytelling out there. One with data, which is the classic kind of one that everybody knows, analytics, business intelligence, data visualization, that sort of thing. But there needs to be another story you tell, which is about your data. Why managing your data is important at a strategic level. So it's not a choice. I think there's 2 kinds of data storytelling out there: stories with data for analytics, stories about data for data management, and every organization needs to know how to do both.
Right. So help me understand the audience for this book, because I'm guessing that you didn't just write this to be read by data management professionals alone. Am I correct in that guess?
That's my core audience.
Sure.
So it would still be a good guess. You want a broader audience, but I was really focused on folks like you and I, and a lot of the people we talk to, these great, practitioners, data leaders who really own and have managed data long before it was cool. Mm-hmm. Who I found struggle and get frustrated with the fact that the business side doesn't understand why they're doing it or why it's so important or think it's strategic at all. So the core audience for that book are the data management practitioners out there who are trying to get senior leadership to fund their data management programs, to get business stakeholders to be involved in data stewardship, data ownership, all those great things that we always talk about and understand why, but they don't. So that was my core audience for the book.
Yeah. So I'm guessing then, so what's exciting for me as being part of that core audience, and as it's clear to everyone at this point, I have not yet gotten my hands on a copy of the book, so that will change.
We got to set you up with that. Sorry about that.
But this is actually kind of fun from not having been able to read it yet, is thinking, like, because you're targeting a data management audience, because our audience is one that I think is often overlooked in many organizations, because of that focus on just the analytics side, the usage of that data and that piece. But data management, there's a lot of upstream activities that happen before you get to that use of that data. So I'm guessing you're able to get into a level of detail that if you had approached it like I was originally thinking of, like a much wider audience, that message would be too diluted to be as helpful to our community as it would be in what you've actually done.
Absolutely. The core audience there, and that was the inspiration. The folks I've worked with my entire career who tend to have this ongoing frustration, this challenge. How do we get funding? How does it not be a project instead of a program? One of my favorite comments so far that somebody's made about the book in a review was a must read for anyone trying to get funding for their data management program. That was like, yes, that's exactly what I want people to feel about it. And there's plenty of help for all the other kinds of data things. And I'm published by Technics Publications. They published the DMBOK 2. So it's, you know, legit core audience focus on helping data managers do a better job.
Yeah.
And I just tried to put the techniques that I've used my entire career, having been on the selling side or the marketing side of a lot of data management services. That's where I heard this frustration. A lot of common themes I heard: challenges, objections, concerns, those things I tried to distill down in some really business accessible nuggets that folks like, you know, you and I and the other peers that we work with can use. And I say right in the intro, I'm not going to teach you how to do data management. I don't have the kind of experience a lot of the folks I'm writing for have.
Right.
So what I hope I can do is give you a better way or a new way to talk about what you already know. That's my objective. How to tell that story in a way that gets your CEO to go from, I have no idea what you're talking about, to how do we live without this? That's what we want from those kind of stakeholders. We want them to realize the excitement, the passion that you and I carry in this space, and see that it should be a strategic, it should be part of the strategic discussion at every organization.
It's so true. And that message, oftentimes, like if we're not thinking about telling a story, if we're not thinking about like wrapping in an audience, and this is one of the things that I always relate to you on when we get going talking, like we naturally have this thread of wanting to be entertaining or wanting to tell a joke or wanting to get interest beyond just the topic at hand. And if anybody in data management, like, who hasn't had the experience of going in, starting to talk about something like data quality or data governance and immediately losing the room, immediately seeing phones up, nobody's paying attention, yawns? Like, it's just a question of how polite are they being about it. It's not even like, so if we can't hook them into something about something relevant to them, data management is a problem for other people. And really, data management is so core to the leadership of businesses today and beyond that it's incumbent on those of us who understand how the sausage is made, how that, you know, the workings of data management actually function. It's up to us to find that way to translate that in a way that can be understood and appreciated by that leadership that exists in our organizations.
That's the core purpose of the book, to give people those examples, to give them some techniques, to show some data stories that don't look like they're data stories. How do you pick apart your company's strategy? We talk all the time about, you don't have a data strategy, you do data work to enable your business strategy. Right. So how do you take that business strategy that doesn't use words like data quality, that doesn't even talk about master data or reference data or even data management activities? How do you find that connection? That's what our peers need to do, is find that connection to show how these two things, and, you know, how data management enables so many of the things that an organization's trying to do.
Right. Right. So I love to ask my guests impossible questions. So I'll just preface this with that. But my question is, so I'm in data management and I need some dollars to do the thing that I want to do. What's the most important advice for somebody who has that meeting this afternoon for, like, make or break on a project proposal internally? We'll say not, you know, externally, but just like, how do we move the needle in a way that we can start to do the work we know is necessary, but haven't yet figured out how to make it happen?
The number one thing is that program you've got, how it's going to enable the strategic intention of your enterprise, how it's going to help your company deliver value to your relationships through your brands at scale.
Mm-hmm.
To be a little more specific, you want to know the top 2 or 3 objectives of your company. Mm-hmm. And you have to tie those directly to the output of data management and go in there with the confidence that those things are not going to happen unless you've got the right data behind those ideas. Mm-hmm. An example, all right, digital transformation as, whatever, fill in the blanks, transforming your customer experience, moving from selling our products and our widgets to licensing the value of those as a service. That's a very strategic board level direction that a lot of companies are taking. Mm-hmm. How do we go into a subscription model rather than a selling, just pieces model, that sort of thing. All of this stuff doesn't happen without good data management. You and I know that, but it's not apparent. So the techniques are finding those clues and finding those hooks to make sure people realize, if we need to be a better partner with our customers and vendors out there, we're going to create a new vendor portal, or we're going to have a new go-to-market. Do you have the data structured and governed in a way that will support those ideas? There are people, and you know them, we've met them on the business side, who want to do something digital, and then you say, well, that's going to take data, and they don't even see that connection.
Right.
So, digital needs data, data needs data management. That's the 2 move, checkmate for that connection. You've got to show that direct connection versus what I think a lot of people do, which is talk about, for instance, data quality for the sake of data quality. That's the goal. Mm-hmm. And when that's the goal, people don't know why that's a goal unless you're in that data quality group.
In listening to you talk about this, and something just occurred to me that I find it almost embarrassing that I haven't talked about before. But I want to ask you your thoughts on this, because I think it's kind of commonly talked about how data management or just the work of data or data leadership, pick whichever modifier you want, it's all about change management and affecting some sort of transformation of some kind a lot of the time. But I think about it too. And for some reason, the way you just put the words together, it's got me thinking, is in the sphere of data management, how much of data management is really about change and change management and transformations and all of that, and how much of it is really about providing some core operational capabilities and services to your organization? And maybe it drives change further down or what have you, but I think there's 2 very fundamentally different pieces to data management. And I'm trying to figure out how do those connect? And then how do those connect into selling what it is that you're looking to do through your data story to management? So that's how I think it kind of ties back. So what are your thoughts on this? I'm just pulling on a thread without a fully formed thought.
If you don't have those core operational elements in place, then actually the rest of it doesn't matter. If you don't have the highly structured foundational data on the classic master data domains, customer, that's why I picked the words relationships and brands, because those represent kind of groupings of classic master data domains: relationships, customer, vendor, partner, prospect, brands, services, offerings, ingredients, materials that go into constructing or manufacturing whatever you make. You don't have those right, then all the talk about change management, all the rest of it doesn't matter. So I think you've got to build that bedrock and have that in place, or at least that's a core part of it, no matter what. And that becomes the piece parts of your story. Again, how can we be better partners with our relationships if we don't have the data to back it up? How can we transform our customer experience if we don't have that data to back it up? How can we, in the time of COVID, move into e-commerce suddenly, or collaborate on a global basis with all our employees scattered all over the world in home offices if we don't have that data foundation and we don't have the data to back up those ideas. So that's kind of my feeling on some of that stuff. You gotta,
Yeah.
I talk a lot about, you gotta have that balance though, between the
Mhm.
how and the why, between the sizzle, which is more the why, and the steak, which is the how.
Yeah.
You can't go too far on either pole. It has to be this combination. It has to be this blending of both of those, and the balance that a narrative provides for you.
Yeah. And I imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that you wrote most of this book probably pre-COVID, right? Like this was, do you have anything either in the book or in your perspective today, drawing from this kind of lockdown quarantine world that we live in at the moment with the pandemic? Hopefully it's thawing and we're coming out of it, but what have we learned during this? Because you mentioned, like, we know that data has become even more important. How does that manifest? Like, how do you even tell your data story when we're all on, Zoom calls and Google Meets all day?
Well, telling the story, a lot of questions in there. I mean, telling a
Yeah.
story, you got to be able to do no matter what medium, right? So
Mhm.
if you're in a room, that's great. If you're not, you've still got to
Fair.
construct that narrative
Mhm.
in plain language on a, black and white piece of paper, or just a plain Word document. A lot of people ask me, how do you start? You start just typing out the narrative. What are the
Yeah.
things, the points you want to make, and so on. I did most of the work that I pulled from to write the book was pre-COVID,
Mhm.
but I did it as my COVID summer project last
Ah,
year, because I realized, after thinking about it for a couple of years, making the leap to actually commit to writing it, I realized I'm never going to get this kind of time again.
yeah,
That
that
for
makes
me
sense.
was, if you don't do it now, you're never going to do it, buddy. That was my own internal monologue that I had with myself about actually getting it done. And I do mention COVID a little bit in there because it became such a forcing function, and all of us in the
Mhm.
MDM space are seeing reactions to that. I know
Mhm.
that the analysts have a huge pickup on inquiries around MDM. The MDM players that I work with have, seen a lot of activity over the last year or so. And some of those forcing functions were things like, we don't have a choice. We have to do e-commerce. We
Yeah.
better get our e-commerce deal, up to snuff there, which meant, did you have good product data? Did you have good customer data? Did your supply chain able to, you've got these disruptions in your supply chain. Did you understand which vendors had which categories and which markets? These are all basic stuff.
Mhm.
So I think I think overall it helps, because if it gave more attention to the importance of that foundational data, that attention's not going to go away.
Right.
And I believe a lot of people saw the benefits of having it either in place already, so there's a lot of scrambling they didn't do,
Mhm.
or realizing to get to a point where almost existentially we can't survive without having this common data foundation, took that leap, and they're not going to go back. They're going to keep going and developing that. So
Hmm.
hopefully a silver lining out of all this COVID stuff is people realize the importance even more so of better structured foundational master data, reference data, metadata, those three little,
Mhm.
those things always behind the scenes.
And that, I mean, I think that, to your point, it puts an exclamation point on the why, right? Like, we know why this stuff's important, I think, or starting to articulate that more and more effectively. It's becoming more intuitive to kind of everyone, and we're on that journey. Like, we're not 100% there yet, but it's happening. And I don't know if you cover this in your book, or maybe there's a prequel book in your future of, what if you are completely overwhelmed? You're like, this has not gone well at all, but I'm not even sure what to do in terms of data management. But I know we need to do something, but I don't feel like I can get out of the gate at all. Like, I can't even figure out what to do until I'm able to articulate that why, tell that data story, but I'm not sure what that data story is. What do you have to say about somebody who's in that kind of scenario? Because I imagine somebody out there right now is thinking that way. It's like, I need to know what the story should be, and then I can figure out how to tell it.
Yeah, buy the book. It's not a prequel. That's really, the core of the
That's
book.
part of it.
Most of
Yeah.
the
Okay.
book is about that.
Yeah.
I have a section called Everybody's Data Story, where I try to describe in a rather generic, standardized way the challenge that every enterprise has.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're an enterprise, you've got enterprise systems, you've got enterprise data, you've got enterprise data problems, and those need enterprise data management. And it's a it comes out of being an enterprise, no matter what type of business you're truly in. I think people get too focused on, well, I'm in the healthcare space and it's so specific and there's nothing like it, versus, oh, I'm in the banking space and financial is very different than manufacturing.
Yeah.
At the level I play at, the challenges, the opportunities are much more the same than they are different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried to pull out of that. What did I see as the common motifs, the common themes, the common trends, the commonality that everybody has if you are an enterprise? So I'm hoping this helps somebody get started and realize they don't need to start with a blank sheet of paper, that you can take certain premises, like you've got lots of verticals, you need horizontal data. You've got lots of, silos, you need a foundation. I mean, I'm moving my hands like this, up and down, because that's how people should think about it. Vertical versus horizontal, rows versus columns. The rows are the master data. That's the reference data. The columns are what the rows are about.
Yeah.
More insight about those rows. So there's some basic principles that I think people can grab onto and then make specific for their particular business. But they shouldn't think that you got to start a completely different story, because there's so many things that are the same in an enterprise.
As somebody who professionally, I've dived pretty deep into a number of different data domains, and I can absolutely agree with your premise that the patterns are so true across those different specifics. And if you can understand the pattern and then understand what makes your situation unique from the pattern, you get kind of double the insights, because then you start to realize why every industry, every set of data has its own little unique quirks. Some of them are more important than others. And at the level that we're operating here and like trying to get funding for a program or something like that, those differences are likely to be relatively inconsequential at this level. But when it comes to the tactical strategy of doing everything you need to do in data management, you want to be very attuned to that. That's always advice I've given to consultants. It's like, understand the patterns. That's table stakes. But when you can understand how you twist that uniquely in that context, then you really understand what's going on. And that's, I think, important. Now, speaking of important, this is not the best transition I've ever done, but the most important question I've ever asked a guest ever on this podcast is, are there any puppets involved in this book in any way?
Oh, okay. No, so
yeah, see, I misdirected. That was a totally dishonest question. Yeah, it was complete misdirection.
The Barbara Walters, if you could be a tree, what kind of tree would you be? Yeah. But no, there's no puppets involved. No puppets were harmed or used in the book. There's more puppets to come, though. So we're happy to talk about the future of the puppets of data. Yeah. But I did not bring the puppets into the book.
And they're not part of the data storytelling strategy. Like they're not core. Like I shouldn't go invest in puppets if I need to tell a data story.
I'd say that's advanced.
It's advanced.
It's highly advanced. That works. I tell data stories with puppets. It is a technique, but it's not for the faint of heart, and you shouldn't do that the first time.
You could hurt yourself. You could pull a number of muscles. Yeah.
And it could be the last meeting you have with your CEO.
It's probably likely if you don't have the repertoire to do it convincingly the way you can. It's probably a bad idea for most.
Use my videos if you want to
videos.
Do that. But proceed with caution.
And for anybody who's new to the puppet conversation, I should give a little bit of background. As Scott is known for, he's known for his showmanship in this space, and the space is better off for having it, because it is a unique voice. But Scott, to great effect, has used puppetry in demonstrating some kind of core aspects in the data management space. Is very useful. So if you haven't seen them, definitely check out his videos and YouTube channel. It's good entertainment, and it may help you in some of the work you need to do to communicate this to the other folks that maybe are having trouble relating. So
thank you, Anthony. And in a bizarre sort of AI-based categorization process at Amazon, my book is categorized under performing arts.
Okay.
And they pick like 3 categories they put your book in.
Oh,
so it's under performing arts. I rank that 193. That was my highest ranking in performing arts, which I position as the #1 data book in performing arts.
Yay.
You
Yeah.
can make the data do whatever you want when you want to, but
I
for
should have
some
a
reason.
whole episode with authors on how their books fall into the categories. My data leadership book is in like an education category and an educational leadership category, but has nothing like there's no technology tie-ins in any of the categories. I forget what the third one is, but it's like it's very arbitrary because there's huge disparities and across books that you're say very similar topic matter, widely divergent. I really would like to understand that.
That's Amazon's algorithm for you, AI, machine learning, whatever they use
If
for it
anybody
there.
from Amazon or anybody else who understands how this process works would like to have some commentary on it, please reach out and become a guest on this show yourself. This is a thread I want to continue pulling on. So let's move on from data storing and data storytelling in particular. And I want to talk a little bit more about this new world we find ourselves in. Obviously, you do a lot of public speaking, you do a lot of in-person engagements, you do a lot of corporate functions and work with different client organizations and helping them, doing keynotes and things like that. I mean, your business and MetaMeta Consulting has to have evolved substantially over the last year. What have you had to do to adjust to the pandemic? And how do you think your organization changes as hopefully we return, maybe slowly, but return to something that looks a little bit more normal in the future?
It's been, it's a daily question you kind of ask yourself in this space, especially doing what I did, which now is purely the kind of stuff you're talking about: events, content, outreach, sales training. In the previous years before COVID hit, I was building a very nice public speaking business and actually ready to move to the next level, which is part of why I wanted to write the book and, trying to do much more big time stuff. And I obviously shut down. What happened, I just kept at some of the producers and realized everybody's now in the same boat. I got better at talking on, webcam and cameras. I'm working on trying to change that experience a little bit too, rather than just the straight, Zoom PowerPoint with a little tiny head. I'm trying to figure out a couple of things, but it picked up very nicely. And all of a sudden I was able to do a whole lot more in a way. So, and a lot more efficiency from my side. I'm doing a DAMA tour of all the DAMA chapters, a worldwide virtual book tour. And I'm now able to do it in a way that I could never do it before. So literally I have a day in March where I'm doing Peru, then Indiana, then Germany, all on the same day. Something you could never do if you were to physically move around.
That is a fact. That is a fact.
I don't need to travel. I don't need to pack, and I don't even need to wear shoes if I have long pants if I don't want to. But it's so it's been interesting that way. I mean, I'm dying to get back in front of people because there's that energy you get in a room. There's that networking that's completely gone in all of these events. But I'm still keeping really busy on a lot of the digital things, and people are looking for someone with my kind of energy, my kind of expertise to talk about a topic that tends to not get a lot of excitement and entertainment value around it for whatever reason. And so the demand for it is really nice. And I think it's going to end up being a hybrid. I mean, with all of this, business meetings and large business conferences, I think, are going to be one of the last things that come back, in my view. So, how do we just keep going, and how do we keep engaging with folks?
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that I started the podcast, was because I missed having the conversations and that networking opportunity and just an ability to just spend 40 minutes talking to somebody. It seems like everything during our days now are so back to back and just frenetic. We don't get a chance to really think about things. And now, like when I schedule a podcast recording or whatever, I get to at least sit down with somebody, talk for a bit of an extended period of time, and really just dive into things that we would if we had the time to talk to each other in just a conference setting, and so, like, to me, that was one of the reasons that started it. And then realizing that people started to say, I like to hear those things. I wish I could have that conversation myself. And if
Mhm.
we can do it on a podcast, now we can all be a little bit part of that, and we can all kind of hold on to that. And that's what's kept it going. And the fact that it's kind of fun. Like this is one of the more enjoyable hours of a day, right? So
Yeah. Oh, I
it's good
love
to
it.
do that.
Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. You miss that kind of sort of serendipitous conversation you might have with somebody in the buffet line. Who knows if buffets will ever come back? Where you go, you know what? I thought about that. I might want to introduce you to somebody, or I have this idea, or they come to you and say, "Oh, that was an interesting point you made, and let's talk about it." So all that is completely evaporated because it's much more formal,
Mm-hmm.
sort of setting up a call, and you can't really even engage with people at that same level. But you just got to learn you got to move with those techniques. One thing I
Yeah.
did, I'm working with this group out of Europe. They did a conference, they're focused on MDM. It's a group called Think Linkers.
Mm.
And so we decided, we did it last September. We're doing another one in March. It's called the MDM Master Data Marathon. And we do a 24-hour event, which I don't think you could do if it was in a physical room.
Mm.
And the idea was, how do we get the whole globe involved? So no matter where you're waking up on Earth in this period in March 24th and 25th, there'll be someone talking about master data. Like I said, master data keeps a lot of people up all night. It's keeping us up all night those 2 days. But that kind of thing is kind of a fun extension of just trying to figure out how do we keep going.
I mean, that's ambitious. I love it. I mean it's the tagline around how it keeps a lot of people up all night. I think that's a very apropos marketing slogan. I hope you guys are actively using that. That's great.
We're kind of plugging that. We got a bunch of, but 24 hours. It's really fun. We had some people the first time, we didn't know if we could do it. Right. I mean, I haven't been up all night since college, so you can't really practice staying up all night. Maybe I could have watched some old Jerry Lewis telethon videos and see how he did it, but it was really fun. And we did stay up all night, and we, 4 a.m, it got a little wacky, and we found that people were sticking with us. So there was a small but important group that actually stayed the whole time. And that was really fun. So we're encouraging more of that in the marathon spirit this year.
That's
But
awesome.
It's the kind of thing, just trying to, and it's focused just on MDM, MDM, them, last M standing for marathon, and off we go. So it's a blast.
That's fantastic. What else is going on? So we've had obviously a lot of changes in the conference landscape, and you were talking about how this this event, I think, is a great example of how you can use the limitations of constraints to do something new and creative. Have you seen any other evidence like that? I like to think about those cases where some sort of innovation happens due to what is initially a a negative or some other lack of a resource, and that new creative solution comes out to be something that you just never would have encountered. Have you seen anything else like that in your travails in especially during these COVID times?
Nothing that's really sort of broken through. I've seen a lot of attempts, and I feel for a lot of the folks trying to figure out how to make that virtual. Mm-hmm. Certainly the networking part, I haven't seen anybody really be able to replicate. And I think there's maybe a little bit of weariness on just sort of the standard 9 speakers in a row, 9 PowerPoints, 9, so it's still in flux there. So hopefully it breaks through. But like I said, I'm trying to do some things. I've watched a lot of folks who are way outside the data business, professional speakers, and try and see some of the techniques they use with camera angles or multiple cameras, or how do you get, your face next to the slides. I got some stuff that I'm going to try out on this DEMA World Tour to see if I can get some of those techniques, because I feel like you don't have to do much to have a difference than what everybody's just standard doing. And what I found interesting is the playing field is almost completely leveled. Mm-hmm. If you watch CNN or you watch any of the news shows, you've got people looking like us, right? Zoom call, a webcam, they got earbuds in, they're using the same tool. So, the professionals haven't really broken the code either, which in a way is kind of encouraging. It's like, well, we're all in the same boat. Let's see what we can do.
That's true. I mean, there's certainly more accessibility to these kinds of tools, and thank goodness we are where we are technology wise in this pandemic, and that we've at least been able to have video chats like it's no big deal. I mean, you go back 10 years ago, this would not have been possible. It would have been audio only, and it would have been a much bigger difficulty to keep things going, because at least face to virtual face is better than just audio, and those quiet folks are not seen nor heard, and so that's that's definitely an interesting thing. So one of the things that you talked about was this notion, and we were talking a little bit about in the creation of podcasts and some of the work that you were doing independently, but I really want to touch back on this, in a virtual context, everything is so much more deliberate and almost formal. Like you use the word formal, and that is so true. Like that's the thing, that those serendipitous moments, going back to the conferences, like random meeting people, at a restaurant or a bar or a buffet line, or just at, getting coffee between sessions at a conference, or in, wherever you happen to sit in that room, just meeting that person and talking to them. We don't get that opportunity now virtually during the work days almost at all. And then even in our social networking, our virtual networking as it stands today tends to be more insulated and less random than we would have otherwise than you would otherwise expect. It's far more contained than we realize a lot of the time. It's not like I've gone out and made a whole bunch of new friends on social media since lockdown started. I lost a few based on political disagreements or whatever else it was, but I haven't gone out and like found new ones. And I think that remains to be a very difficult thing. So I just want to to anybody who's listening, I think things like something that's kind of random and kind of sounds a little bit like we're really going to do 24 hours of MDM. Like that's exactly the kind of thing that might spark a new connection in this time of difficulty in making those kinds of connections.
Yeah. It's trying to come up with some way that people can just somehow replicate that conversational aspect of it. I don't think you can it's hard to do it at any kind of scale without having physical connection. The Gartner conferences I used to go to, the big one on, data management, 3/4 of the value I would get would be bumping into people, looking for people, having those chats. It wasn't necessarily the sessions for me that was the big draw. It was more at the booths and seeing what's happening and hearing kind of the buzz and all that informal stuff that you really get. But on the flip side, I've made a ton of new friends on social media. So I've been focused really hard on LinkedIn.
This does not surprise me at all.
And and I really it may sound sort of silly, but one day I just went, oh, it's social media. I get it. And I've made all kinds of great friends, and a lot of us are just dying to get in the same room together, but we chat literally every day, every other day. There's a group of us in the data space who are all kind of doing similar stuff that I'm doing in different areas. What's really fun is this group I've gotten hooked up in. Everybody's really creative. They all have their own voice. They're all doing other stuff. We've kind of created a mutual amplification society where we all support each other's stuff. And there's some heavy duty data scientists in the group. And I just go up, I don't understand what you're talking about, but I'll give you a like, because I'm much more on the, business strategic side. But that part's been really fun. And I don't think I would have spent that kind of time if I was running around doing a lot of physical events. So there's some benefits to some of this, I guess.
Yeah, you don't strike me as a person who used your quarantine as just catching up on Netflix. I have a feeling you've been extremely active, and I think that
the book was, again, this was my big COVID project. It was like, can I get this out? And I did. So hooray. Yeah.
So in the spirit of strategy, so I want to just, for anybody who's listening and not watching the audio or watching the video of this, Scott is wearing a white ball cap that says truth on it. Okay. So now I'm going to ask him a question about that hat. And that is, why does your hat say truth as opposed to, I don't know, something more like data or data storytelling or something like that? Why are you wearing a hat that says truth as opposed to something else? I'm curious about why.
Single version of the truth, common version of the truth. We manage the truth. We can handle the truth in the organization. That's my view. I sort of bifurcate our space into two big buckets: determining the truth and deriving meaning. And determining the truth, data management, data governance, data stewardship, master data, reference data, metadata, PIM, the whole stuff that we do and focus on to build that foundation, versus deriving meaning, which is business intelligence, AI, ML, visualization, all the things that people do with data. So I try, and that's part of the technique I try to help people with in understanding the value of data. You've got to determine the truth first before you derive meaning. It's not chicken or egg here. It is egg and omelet, truth, then meaning. So hence the meaning of my truth hat.
That's awesome. And I love the energy and I love the message. And this is what you get with Scott. Like, I knew that we would have this conversation, and I knew that it would be uplifting, and that I'd end up with more energy than I started the conversation with. And that's how it goes. So Scott, unfortunately though, we're all out of time. Can you believe it? Like, it flew by. I don't even know where it went, but we're already at time. So I just want to thank you again for taking the time, telling us about your book, being on the show. And it's always, just an absolute pleasure to talk with you and learn more about what you're doing.
Anthony. Yeah, thanks for having me. It was great fun. I can't believe it's over already too. So
thank you. And thank you for watching or listening today. You'll find links and more information about today's topic in the show notes. Subscribe to our show on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Visit Algman.com to learn more about Algman data leadership and the many ways we can help you become a data leader. Stay safe during these unusual times and go make an impact.